guys, I wanted to do a bit of a positive video today that I've been meaning to do for quite some time. I've got like 2 or more super negative videos that are going to be coming up really soon. Today I've spent probably 5 or 6 hours uploading and downloading videos, proof, witness accounts, screenshots, all manner of things for another video that's going to take me so many hours to do. And then after that, I'm going to be reviewing the Cutlery, the Chinese bussy knockoff. That thing has been #1 on my list for such a long time, and crap just keeps happening. Now, I was going to film this other video that will be coming up here soon, but I'm having problems with the goat fencing again. Had to run a goat into the ground for the last hour. Just like I'm going to run that dirt bag into the ground. But regardless, today let's talk here about some of the thinnest knives that I own. Now, what we're talking about when we're talking about thin is something a little different than what your average casual viewer might consider. I'm not talking about the thickness of this knife at the spine. We are going to be talking today about behind the edge thickness. So when you look at a knife, if it's not a 0 ground or a Scandi, you'll see this little shiny part at the end. The shiny part of that knife, that edge, has shoulders behind it, and we measure the width of those shoulders to determine behind the edge thickness. Now, this is not a universally applicable measurement because we don't just have degrees per side, which is what most people use when they're trying to figure out how slicey a knife is going to be. We don't just have degrees per side, and we don't just have behind the edge thickness. We have the effective behind the edge thickness to consider. It gets a little bit into the math, it gets a little bit into nuance, and the honest truth is most people don't care. And even within the knife community, even most of your knife makers, and even most of the people who are out here screaming about edge geometry for the rooftops, they don't actually get it. We're going to keep it a little bit simple though today. The effective behind the edge thickness on all of these knives is wonderfully thin. Now, I just mentioned that, I believe, I should have, maybe I'll say it in case I didn't. Thinner is not better. A thinner behind the edge thickness is not universally better. And I've got 2 knives that I love here to demonstrate this with you today. This is the Very Good Knife Company Wasp. Very Good Knife Company makes incredibly affordable knives by hand with great steel, great heat treat, no gimmicks, no silliness, just absolutely amazing value knives. This is the Wasp, and our behind the edge thickness here is somewhere around 24 thou if memory serves. Now, this blade is hollow ground, so 24 thou on this knife with almost no resistance past the cutting edge makes this quite a slicey little blade, but it is not included in my thinnest knives video here. I'm using this as an example as compared to this. This is the Very Good Knife Company Traditions Junior. Excuse me. Again, this is a hollow ground knife, and our behind the edge thickness here is right at about, it's not going to show you, right at about 15 to 16 thou behind the edge with a hollow grind. And let me tell you guys, this thing glides through anything that you want to cut like butter. Now, why is this knife that will slice through anything better than this knife? Why is it not universally better? Your strength and your toughness and your slicing ability, the scale works exponentially. So when I go from a 24 thou behind the edge hollow grind to a 15 thou behind the edge hollow grind, I am gaining a huge amount of slicing ability, and this knife will outcut this knife by a large margin even when dull. Geometry cuts. This knife will keep cutting and keep cutting well after the psycho sharp edge is gone, and it will be easier to bring that edge back because you have to remove less material. However, you get exponentially less toughness. So if I was going into the woods, and who knows what I may be doing, and I was only going to carry one pocket knife, maybe I'm going to skin, which this I think will be a fantastic game knife. But maybe I'm going to skin, maybe I'm going to end up doing feather sticks, and maybe I want to baton a little bit of wood for my kindling and stuff like that. Who knows what I may end up doing, because in the woods, stuff happens. Sometimes wood's a little bit weird. Sometimes you nick a bone a little bit the wrong way. This would not be my go-to for my primary pocket knife. This would be, because this knife, I promise you, still performs absolutely amazingly, but it doesn't slice as well, but it's going to be so much tougher. Okay? So, you know, if I showed you two different knives from two different makers, somebody might say, oh, he's comparing two completely different knives from two different makers, and he's just fluffing his buddy's butt and dissing this guy. I don't know what you guys might say. These knives are both from the same guy, Jake Asowit, very good knife company. They're both phenomenal, and they're a good example of how two knives that are of relative similar size, I know that they're different, guys, but in your pocket or on your belt, they're going to be essentially the same. And yet they fulfill different roles. Is this one better because it's thinner? Well, you know what? If I work in an office and I'm cutting cardboard all day, yes. Is this one better because it's thicker? Well, if I'm in the woods, yes. Okay, so I hope that clarifies that. So this is one of the thinnest knives in the collection, right at about 15th hour. Barely thicker behind the edge than a doggone piece of paper or a human hair here. I think I do have a little bit of microchipping up at the belly. That is something that can happen when you get this thick, and it absolutely could have been from some misuse on my part. You don't notice it when you're using it. I'm not even probably going to be able to show it, and man, does this knife just perform. The thing about thin edges that production knife companies are generally going to avoid, and even custom makers are going to avoid, is the chances of putting this knife into an unskilled user's hands, someone who's gonna, I don't know, stick it into a tin can and be cutting the top of a tin can off, and then stick this tip into something and try and bust it loose, pry it loose like, say, fat wood. It's gonna break. They're gonna be unhappy. Production knives, that's cost, okay? Generally speaking, if you want a knife that is this thin behind the edge, it's quite expensive. It takes a lot of skill. As you're grinding a knife down this thin, it's more grinding. You're more likely to burn the edge. You're more likely to have warping and cracking during heat treat because the edge has less support. Generally speaking, your knife is going to be in a higher price category. That is not the case with Very Good Knife Company. Now, I should know exactly how much this knife costs off the top of my head, but to be honest with you, I have forgotten. Way back when I bought this guy, they were $80 for an American-made, handmade, custom pocket knife, an 80 CRV2. With shipping, I think it was like 90, maybe 95. It's been 3 years or 4 years, I'm not exactly sure. I think these are going for about $100. They might be up to 120. And you don't just get the custom handmade knife, you get a wonderful Kydex sheath guys. He makes these too. I don't know how he does it, but this is one of the knives I want to talk about today. Excuse me. Oh, The reason I'm not so sure about this one, even though it's more recent, I traded him this one for one of my adventure crafts, so I didn't get this knife for free. This was, it was traded, and I'm happy to have traded to him. He's just a wonderful maker and honestly a wonderful human being, and that's getting harder and harder to find within this industry. Next up, this is a Creely Mako. Beautiful leather sheath, guys. Nice ulti clip. The leather sheath is a little bit large for a pocket sheath for the size of the knife, but it's still just so doggone nice. And look at that. We've got Bowler N360. Now, as you saw, I don't normally have to look at what steel we're talking about when I pull a knife out. Normally I know Bowler N360 this is the only knife that I have in the steel. I don't know if I've ever even seen another knife in this steel. This is Bowler's equivalent to Zefinite from Zap Metals or LC200N. It's essentially rust proof. It's essentially drop it into the ocean and leave it there and it will not rust. I mean, more corrosion resistance than MagnaCut, more corrosion resistance. It's insane. It's still quite tough and it holds an edge quite well. This isn't a Rex 121. I don't even believe this holds an edge as well as S35 VN, but it's fairly close. For my uses, that's not a problem, and for the stain proofness that you get, that's not a problem. And when you're looking at a knife like this where your behind the edge thickness is like 11 thou, listen, if I lose my razor sharp edge on this knife, it's still gonna cut. This thing is amazing. Just as cool as it can get. I think Gary Creely is a really cool guy selling knives at an excellent price. I was just looking today at another custom maker who I don't dislike. I'm not going to mention their names, but I don't dislike them. And they're making basically a production knife that's like this big with like a 1.5 inch blade. And with a cord wrapped handle, no handle scales, no milling, no nothing, just wrap the handle in paracord and a Kydex sheath. He's selling them for like $250, and he's selling a basic knife like this for like $450. No special steel, no special anything. I don't know how some makers find a way to do it, but they do. That's not Gary. He's got a good backlog because because he's got an excellent product at an excellent price. This is a knife that a knife nerd like me is proud to carry. Very cool blade. At this thickness though, I'm sorry about it. I'm not sick actually, just running that goat for like the last hour through the thorns and the bushes and crap like that. It's kind of cold and my lungs are kind of wore out. This is a knife that I'm proud to own. I traded for this one also to Gary. Thank you, Gary. It's a fantastic blade. It's another one, like I said, the Very Good Knife Company. I'm proud to have traded that one. I'm proud to have traded this one. I will tell you right now, why is mail coming now? Stay here, Dex. I'll tell you right now, I traded up. And I've actually, I've been very blessed to trade up quite a few times, and I really love that. Beautiful, just fantastic knife. But again, at 11 to 12 thou, I usually mic it at 11.5. Sometimes I mic it at 11, sometimes I mic it at 12. I'm guessing that my micrometer is not the most accurate, or equally likely, if not more likely, when it comes down to that point, I'm not that accurate. So 11 or 12 thou behind the edge. I'm not gonna use this knife hard. I need to do its own review, but this is not a knife that you're ever gonna see me review, because I could take this knife right now, I could stick it into a piece of wood, it would be stupid. I could do the tip test, and I could just bend this right over and snap it. And I'm not saying it performs subpar, I'm saying there's not a lot of material there, guys. But the performance that you get from that is just You know, if I could take a regular Gerber knife type guy or cold steel knife type guy and let him cut some stuff with this, he wouldn't even know what to say. I mean, it's just, guys, it's literally like magic. All right, the last one. Oh, crap. I remember the behind the edge thickness on this guy, but I don't know that I remember the name of it. This is Rowland Cutlery. I believe that this is the Gopher. Okay. Now, this is another knife and a steel that I have never seen another knife in my genre in. This is in chef cut. This is a lightly modified 26C3 steel, a high carbon steel, not a lot of toughness, but edge holding, and it's going to support that really thin edge coming in at, like, I think 15 thou. And this is 15 thou with a full flat grind. This blade's not quite as thin as the Creely. I would be more likely, the tip has a little bit more support. It's not quite as aggressive. I'd be a little more likely to use this knife in the woods and for a lot of the stuff that I do, but still, this is a knife I'm going to be careful with. I've used this knife a lot. Rowland Cutlery, he's a chef. Unlike some of the other douchebag chefs in the industry, he's a good guy. He makes just a fantastic knife, fantastic edge geometry. Actually, I think his parents' house just burnt down. So go follow him on Instagram, check his stuff out. I think his shop's on pause right now. He very well might need some help. I don't remember seeing anything about a GoFundMe, but I could be wrong. The past few days have been insane. These are, now I'm talking out my butt because I think these are olive wood handle scales. You know, I came out here, guys, half cocked. You can tell. Normally I'm a lot better, but normally I don't have to run after a goat right in the middle. And also normally I'm not preparing to film such a controversial and horrible video as I'm getting ready to film. So some stuff has been scrambled up here, and I'm losing my light too. And all that red tint that you see is from my recording light. That's how dark it is. It's darker than it looks for you right now, but I'm really impressed with this camera sometimes. We've got orange liners, orange and black, I think. Understated logo. You know, we don't have a big billboard of a logo. We have Rowland Cutlery in cursive right there on the spine. And then we've got an American flag. Don't we? This one might not have the American flag. Yeah, it does. Man, I'm retarded. There it is. This is a beautiful knife. Now, this particular blade, the one downside to it, I think that it has a lot of influence from a paring knife. I love using this knife for food prep and stuff like that. But the handle at the front here being so narrow can lead to fatigue when you're doing feather sticks. Even with this edge so thin, even though this thing will just glide through wood, it's still a fairly small thing to grab up there. So this knife really shines with more delicate work, and like I said, with a lot of my chef stuff. What's cool about that, with that being said though, is it is still so versatile. We do have the larger pommel. It came in a JRE sheath, and I've got it running with a ferro rod. The last thing on this particular knife that I would say is that with a bushcraft sheath like this, I would like to have a lanyard hole in it. I'd like to put a lanyard on it and make it easier to grab this thing out off the belt sometimes. But a phenomenal knife, and you know, I just said some things that can be negative in context depending on your use, but he's got other models as well. I think his Kit Fox model looks literally perfect as a bushcraft knife. And so I actually won this knife at Blade Show on a spin the wheel thing that he had on Instagram. But he was actually my neighbor at Blade Show, and I stopped and couldn't help but look at his knives a whole bunch of times. His work is awesome. He's big on behind the edge thickness. He's big on edge geometry, but he's not big on hype. And he is big, I would say he's big on selling a product that deserves to be sold at a price it deserves to be sold at. That's what I'm a fan of. And that's what I want to bring to you guys. So here's what I'm going to do. This video kind of sucked. I'm off the cuff. We don't have special B-roll. I'm running out of light. I'm running out of focus. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to put these guys in the description box below. Doggone, I got to go make dinner. The wife just gave me the porch light of you're in trouble. I'm going to put these guys in the description box below. I just want to give them all a huge shout out for being fantastic knife makers and for being a true positive benefit to the knife community and giving customers what they pay for. That's becoming a rare commodity, I feel sometimes, and I think it's sad. Rock and roll. I'll talk to you in the description box below, and I hope that you have a blessed day.